Everyone, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. I'm your host, William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, getostrich.com, and of course, host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Today, I've got a special episode for you. It is about the coronavirus. I've got Andrew Holliday, my co-founder, who is working with me on Ostrich, and we talk a little bit about the impacts that we've experienced. He was actually in South America traveling and very quickly had to leave and head back home to the UK. So we go a little bit into that. We also talk about what you can do if you are struggling, whether it's financially or just emotionally. And we talk about some of the opportunities. In spite of this really difficult times and circumstances, there are things that you can be doing and opportunities that are hidden within sort of all the craziness and madness. So I hope that you enjoy this special edition of the Silicon Alley Podcast. It's a little departure away from what you typically get, but I hope that you enjoy. Thanks. All right. Welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. I'm William Glass and have Andrew Holliday back on the podcast. Excited to have you on, Andrew.
Great to be here. Well, great to be on again.
Yep. So if you guys don't remember or haven't listened to the podcast, then you probably missed the fact that Andrew and I are building a company called Ostrich together. And Andrew was spending some time in South America while we worked and was working remotely. And some things have changed since then. They go by the name of Corona.
Yeah, big change. Big COVID-19 shaped hole in my traveling plans, which is quite unfortunate. But still, if anything, it's dramatically increased my productivity since, in the past 6 days, a lot has been achieved compared with the prior 3.5 months.
Yeah. Somehow having reliable Wi-Fi and being confined to your room has that effect.
Makes a big difference, as it turns out.
Yeah.
It's kind of a handy piece of timing, if not for everybody else, then potentially for Ostrich.
Yep. So tell me what happened. Like, what was it like over in, where were you? Were you in Chile when all this stuff started breaking out?
So we had a plan to travel all through South America, with the exception of most of Brazil and Venezuela and some of the other countries in the Northeast. So we'd spent a lot of time in Argentina and a lot of time in Chile. And we'd gone all the way down to the bottom tip of the continent, worked our way up through Patagonia, and we'd made it to the Atacama Desert in Chile. And that was when things started to take a turn for the worse. Obviously, it had been kind of happening in Europe for about a week or two, where there started to be like measures being put in place by authorities to clamp down on movement of people and on operation of businesses. But nothing was really happening in South America. There were, so we flew out on March 17th. And as of March 14th, I was thinking, well, we might get a really good deal on a cruise in the Galapagos at this rate, because people really don't want to travel. It seems like it's terrible everywhere else. It's taken a bit more time for things to kick in South America. There have been fewer infections, fewer cases. It arrived late. And in terms of the season, it was a bit more favorable to humanity, a bit less favorable to the virus. It was obviously warmer down there at the moment in summer.
Yeah.
Things have been slow to pick up, and then the 15th, we started thinking, well, maybe it's not very responsible to be traveling around while this is happening, and started talking to my parents, like, well, if we decided we wanted to come back to the UK, what would that look like? And then while we're on the phone, turns out Bolivia shuts their borders where we're supposed to go in 3 days time, and Peru shuts its borders, which is where we're going immediately after we get to Bolivia. So we were lucky enough to be able to book a flight back to the UK there and then. We made it back via 3 airports and an entire day of traveling, but here we are. So it was a strange experience, because nothing was really happening. But people would, we were staying in a hotel, like one of 2 or 3 hotels that we'd stayed in the whole time, and you could tell the people who were staying there were starting to get a bit panicky. things are happening at home. They're getting messages from family like, hey, you should probably come back. It's getting pretty bad. And so, yeah, we also eventually took that advice. But, no school closures, businesses are still open. Life was continuing as normal while we were there. And then once we started getting back into airports, a lot more people with masks when we left, when we'd flown in 5 days earlier. It started to feel more like, things were not as they should be.
Interesting. Yeah, because I remember talking to you, I guess you said it was like the 14th or 15th or 14th, and saying like, 14th, hey, we're gonna get these cheaper tickets, and like I was at that point,
hey, come and visit.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's gonna be great. You're gonna get a great deal on a flight. And I was like, yeah, I guess we get some work done too while we're there. We'll be in person. We haven't been in person for a while, so that'll be good.
Yeah.
And then next day I got that text saying, hey, we booked flights home for like the next day. And I was like, oh, well, that escalated quickly.
So it's a rapid change.
Yeah.
And then you get here and things are completely different.
Yeah. And you're in the UK, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm back at my parents' house in the UK. And we arrived here, Heathrow Airport completely dead. Nobody flying out there. Like all of the departure gates empty. My flight arrived, but it wasn't like usual where there are a bunch of other flights. It's just my flight that's going through the passport gates. While we were there, obviously there are other flights coming in, but that was the only one at that time.
Wow.
Baggage hall completely empty. Very, very weird. My parents had no problem stopping in the departure zone to pick us up more conveniently than like waiting in the car park. It's very straightforward for them. So not a very, very weird situation. And then lots of things are closed here. People are panic buying stuff, toilet roll shortages, just everything that you were reading about in the news. It's really happening.
Yeah.
And now we're on lockdown for 3 weeks or something like that. Anyway, Boris has yet to clarify that. But it's weird. It's a very, very different England than we left in December. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. We were talking about this. Like no one saw this coming, right? Like this is a black swan event.
Yeah, it was entirely unexpected. Even though the US government was running like a germ game, as they call it, like gaming out this whole thing the whole of last year, and found that what is currently happening is exactly what would happen. We read an unbelievable article in the New York Times detailing this whole thing that I'm sure we can post in the comments or something. I don't know. It'll be somewhere down here.
We'll link it.
But so apparently the government knew that they were woefully unprepared. While this was happening in Wuhan and only Wuhan, they knew that they didn't have the stuff and just didn't prepare for it. But if you think about the general public, nobody was thinking, oh, we're going to shut the economy down for a few months because we're going to have a deadly flu outbreak that we don't have a vaccine for, that you can't just, just chalk up to, well, it's the flu and everything continues as normal. It's one of those things that you don't tend to plan for.
No. Yeah. Usually when you're planning out life, you're not like, okay, and I've got to remember that there could be a pandemic that closes down the economy for at least a month, probably longer. So while I'm planning out my wedding or my travels or whatever, it's not something that people really, really think about. And
we should probably say it's currently 6:30 p.m. in the UK, 2:30 p.m. in the US on March the 24th. So that's the paradigm we're currently operating in, because by the time this gets published, things will be completely different. Yeah. And even by the time, by tomorrow morning, things will be completely different. So
correct. There's no point you listening to this podcast.
Yeah, there's no way.
Except for the entertainment value of what is to come, which is going to be gold.
Any current affairs that we discuss, completely irrelevant. It's not worth. You just skip this bit.
Yeah, and that's something that we made a point of when we're recording this. We're not going to talk about what's this U.S. bill about giving people money, because it keeps getting shot down on the Senate floor. Who knows? Right now, the market's surging because they might pass it, but when it doesn't get passed, it'll drop back down, and then when they finally do, it will. And then once the economy realizes, great, we're still shut down for at least a month.
How long?
Who knows? So yeah, we're gonna definitely talk about some stuff that'll be valuable during everything that's going on right now, but not tied to answering, when
It'll
should
be
I
a bit
file
more
my taxes?
thematic, yeah, rather
Yeah,
than the specifics of what's going on.
exactly. So, man, yeah. And so I'm in New York and Queens, and I can't tell you how many people have reached out being like, "Oh my gosh, New York's terrible. Like, what's going on?" And I'll tell you, the part of Queens that we're in is quite quaint. There's really not a whole lot happening. Like everyone's freaking out, and at least from where we are, which is in not even in a, I got almost a suburb of Queens, so to speak. Pretty residential. I feel like it's more like what you see in the movies, or what the boroughs were like in the 70s and 80s when people were like outside hanging out on the block and like talking to each other. Kids were playing. Like that's what it feels like. Everyone's staying far away from each other, but there's more people out on the street, and it definitely feels more residential, which is interesting. So
Yeah, it's funny how it seems like people are getting outside more, doing more all of a sudden when it's like, so Boris announced last night, Mr. Johnson this is, announced that you'd be allowed to leave the house to go and get food or medicine to help somebody out. And like one of 4 reasons was to exercise once a day alone or with members of your household. And it's like all of a sudden people are like, whoa, I can only exercise once a day, I better get it in. Like
yeah,
people weren't exercising once a day before, but now all of a sudden everybody's out going for walks in the afternoon. Well, the weather's been nice the past few days, so people have like been trying to get outside.
yeah,
This has caused many problems here in terms of social distancing.
yeah. Everyone's
But it's just like everyone's suddenly being healthier. The earth is feeling healthier because there's no flights going around. There's people are driving so much less.
yeah,
It's almost like a reset for for the planet, for humanity, in
yeah,
an odd way. There's so many negatives to this whole thing, and that feels like a small positive. At least where we are, it feels like people are
yeah,
getting out and enjoying themselves, even though it's harder to socialize. You're at least getting out in fresh air and enjoying nature a bit more,
yeah.
which is a nice change.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I mean, obviously what's going on is terrible if you look at it from that perspective, but I'm pretty sure the news has done a good job of hitting all the terrible things. So like,
Very confident.
but
Very confident.
I agree. I think that's one of the things is like people have a chance that are forced to work at home or unfortunately lost a job, and they're at home now. And I'm sure that, I mean, that's very stressful, but at the same time, you get a chance to like pause, reflect, rewind, think about like, I've heard people that weren't happy with their jobs, and now that they, have to work from home, they realize how much they actually appreciate what they do.
Yeah.
And it's changed what they want to do. They were thinking about leaving a job and now they want to stay. And like other folks have heard of the exact opposite, where it's like, man, I thought I was really happy, but now that I've got this time to like do other things that I always wanted to do, I'm starting to realize that that maybe I should try something else. And there's
Yeah.
definitely an opportunity hidden in all this craziness.
This is a huge potential paradigm shift where everyone's being forced to operate in a very different manner to what they're used to, which is, oddly for us, this has changed pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
In terms of what we're doing,
Oh yeah.
our lives are very similar to what we were doing before, where we were just trying to, make progress on Ostrich and get this off the ground as soon as we can. But, for most people, what a massive change in, your idea of how the world
Yeah.
has to work. All of a sudden you're forced to work from home if you are in a position to.
Yeah.
And you're just experiencing a new way of living, and it changes how you think about the world. It changes how employers think about the world. When we come out the other side of this, which inevitably at some point we will,
Yeah.
things will not go back to the way they were, because for better or worse, this is going to cause a change in the way that the world is viewed by everybody. So, like as you say, massive, potentially huge opportunity, whether it's changing the way that you run your life, because you've had an experience where, either you've really struggled through this and you were in a difficult position, and so you plan your life differently moving forwards because is this going to happen again? Probably at some point in the next 15 or 20 years. In a way, we're lucky that this is not a particularly deadly virus. You think it's not wiping out half of humanity indiscriminately. It's, there's a certain demographic that's more vulnerable, and it's even then your chance of surviving pretty good. But you got to think that something worse is out there at some point. And so, maybe you think about preparing differently to make sure that in future you could be, able to cope better with this, or it's, you've had a really good experience with your job, living through this.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about, well, do I need to go back to doing my job the way that I was before? Or was I just so much more productive as a result of, not being surrounded by people at the office who are always bothering me, and I'm able to just get things done because I've got nothing else to focus on?
Yeah.
Is this something that I want to try and get, into my life on a regular basis, not just because there's some deadly flu virus out there? So, opportunities to live life in a different way and learn from those experiences, whether they're good or bad experiences, at least it seems to me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I agree. And it's interesting because it's kind of what you and Grace left to do, right, on this trip, was obviously experience some of these different places. But a lot of what we talked about, last time we sat down on the podcast was figuring out a different lifestyle, a different way of working, a different way of doing things. And it also looks like changing your worldview a little bit. And I mean, some of that, it looks like the way that we planned on working works through a pandemic. So that's checkpoint there. But
somehow we've lucked out there. I would say now more than at any other point during the trip, I am able to think about experimenting with what sort of works best for me. Now I'm stuck in one place. It's not, set out to go and do all of this traveling and also try and figure out what's the optimal way to live a lifestyle. It turns out that traveling all the time is not the optimal way to live. not as sustainable as one might hope. So now I'm not only am I more productive with Ostrich, but I'm more able to work on those things that we kind of set out to work on when we originally left. And so again, I mean, can't really emphasize enough how lucky we are to be in that position where, there's as many positives for me as that. Because this is for the most part the very, very negative thing that's happening. What a terrible thing for the world. And somehow it's resulted in me being able to achieve or to work more on things that I'd set out to work on.
Yeah.
And
I think that's an important thing to note, right? Like you could easily mindset wise be like, this ruined our entire trip. We only got to go, halfway through, and like we had all this other stuff planned and booked, and like this is just, it's terrible. But you have the exact opposite mindset, which I think is super important to have right now. Is the opportunity.
Important, but important also to recognize that comes from a place of great privilege.
True.
It's not, that I would think is not the case for most people, but I am very lucky to have that. And the fact that, there are a lot of opportunities, and hopefully that's something that, other people are also able to take advantage of. There's so many things that you can try and experiment with in a time when, the worldview is shifting, as you say. So hopefully people are able to continue to try and find the positives where it's, where the opportunity is there. Obviously not everybody has that opportunity, but if you do, I think it's kind of a good time to be able to try out things that you always thought, I never had time to do this. I never had time to work on this idea, that I had for a company. I never had time to do the research, whatever. And all of a sudden, if you're able to, do your job in half the time, during the day, because you don't have to deal with Jim from across the office coming and asking if you want to get coffee. Then, all of a sudden that could free up a lot of hours for you to work on things that you really want to work on. If there's stuff outside of your regular job that you'd like to have a go at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know you mentioned the privilege, and I don't want to overlook that, but at the same time, you and Grace also saved up a bunch of money for a year to save up for this trip and all this stuff. So it's not like privilege, but also prepared. And I think that goes back to your earlier question, is how can you think about preparing for something like this financially, mentally, emotionally, and all these other ways in the future?
Yeah. It definitely, given that this more than likely in some form or another, it doesn't, whether it's a virus, but you look back over the last 20 years, and you think about at the beginning of the millennium, you've got 9/11 happens 2001, and then financial crisis happens 2008. Now we're in 2019, 20, and we've got a deadly virus. People think of these as black swan events, but they kind of happen. You can't project it.
Yeah.
But you can be sure that they're going to happen.
Absolutely.
It's unlikely. Even the bull market that we had for the last 12 years is so unheard of and unlikely in the past.
Absolutely.
So thinking, you can think moving forward that there's almost certainly going to be another shock to the system that's coming, whether it's a virus or an illness or whatever, whether it's another housing crisis, some sort of market correction that you need to be prepared for. And so thinking about how did this situation affect you, and how is that going to change your worldview moving forwards? Again, in a sense, timing for us, we were a little bit lucky that we were halfway through our trip and we had planned, we'd saved up enough money to have this runway to be able to travel and to work on Ostrich for a while. So, we're fortunate to be in that position where we were, reasonably prepared for this kind of outcome. So, certainly it's something that, as I think about it moving forwards, it's going to be more of a thought in my mind, because I never thought about this kind of thing previously. I wasn't wandering around in 2017 planning for, the great virus of 2020 is coming and I better be ready. I certainly wasn't thinking about that, but is it something that I'll think more about in future? Absolutely. It's definitely, being prepared for a crisis, whether it's a personal one or it's a more macro level, out of your control. Being prepared, from a financial standpoint tends to help. Now, would I like to be a prepper at some point? Maybe I do want to get into that in the future, but just thinking about, starting with how I got 3 months, 6 months, or a year's worth of cash. If I cut back, as much as I can, I assume that I'm going to lose a job. Can I live for a year on what I've got? Is a good way to start. And I can't, am I in a position to, do I have a bunker? No, I'm not going to start stockpiling canned food underground somewhere in Nevada, or preferably New Zealand. But, am I going to do that right now? No, I can't do that. But can I, give myself a little bit more runway to be stable in times of difficulty? Yeah, definitely can. It's definitely something that I'll be looking to do, to make sure that the same thing happens again, I find myself equally prepared, and it's a little bit less because of fortunate timing and a little bit more because I was planning ahead. So I think that's certainly a lesson that I am going to take away from this situation, and be thinking about, as I move forward. I don't know about you, about how you feel about this.
I mean, I agree. I think you hear people, like, a lot of people, when we had this bull market, right, and it lasted 12 years, it was really slow, and a lot of people were like, are we about to dip back dip back. And of course, it just kept chugging along, and no one really predicted that. Yep, exactly. I know Andrew pointed at himself for those that are just listening. It just kept chugging and chugging along. And you miss out on a lot of stuff during that 12-year period. There's a correction. I don't know. I think it's just that we can't really predict any of these things, and like trying to think that you can is a little bit foolish. But I like the fact of running through different scenarios, right? Even if you don't necessarily take action right away, but you're like, okay, if something happened where I couldn't work, what would I do? Like somehow my legs fell off, what would I do?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and that's not, I'm honest here. So come take this from this perspective, understanding like what you do in that situation is different than worrying about my legs falling off every day.
Right.
And I think that's something.
It's not about the crazy situation. It's about, okay, if anything bad does happen, am I prepared for it?
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't necessarily know what it is, but if something did happen, it was out of my control. What could I control? And am I in a position where I'd be happy with that situation?
Yeah.
So I think that's great advice. And if you're not, like right now is a really tough time and you're struggling, or someone in your family or is struggling, and this is going to be hard. And I think the other thing to recognize is that yes, there are people that are going to be struggling, and then there's going to be people that are prepared or in a different position that are going to be surging, right? Like Zoom conferencing right now, their stock is soaring because now everyone's moving to that platform. Did they know that when they invented video conferencing, that like a pandemic was going to force everyone to work from home and buy their software? Probably not, but
they did. Genius planning.
Exactly. But the point is, like, even in the midst of a crisis, there are some folks that are going to be in a better position to succeed. And not that you could necessarily control that aspect. And that's an example of not necessarily being able to control, but like there are times where people struggle. As you mentioned, personal crisis could have happened in this bull market that's been going on for 12 years. And that could have been the hardest time, but you could have been on top of the world in 2008 and 2009 because you made smart decisions there. But right. Lost a family member or something, like you lost your legs, something like that.
Oh.
So yeah, I don't know. That whole rant there was just to say that like, we can't really control everything. So worrying about everything isn't the right solution, but having a plan and thinking about what would I do in the worst case scenario, whether it's during a bull market or during the midst of a coronavirus crisis.
Yeah. I mean, just planning for the worst. Hoping for the best, planning for the worst, which is age-old advice. Good for us.
It is.
We've come up with something that's been around for a long time. This is good work we're doing here.
Yeah. Agreed. Oh, it's going to be interesting. In terms of, like, we've started to talk about this, in terms of challenges, like, what do you do if you're in a position where you did lose a job, or you're unsure if you're going to have a job come, tomorrow or next week?
Yeah, I mean, there's a tough situation to be in. Obviously, we are confirmed unemployed. We were already out of jobs.
Yes, we self-chose.
Yes, we self-firing. But yeah, I mean, that's a tough situation to be in. And again, this is something that, you can try to prepare for and just put yourself in the best situation to deal with that you can. Obviously, because, this particular instance is pretty unique in that all of a sudden, 20 or 30% of the population is going to be unemployed pretty unavoidably.
Yeah.
And that is going to be exceptionally tough, but some of those people are going to have had a plan in place, thinking if I lose my job at any point in time, am I ready to deal with the consequences or not? And some people won't. And that's, sometimes that's for a good reason. Sometimes it's not for a good reason. It's difficult to say, these people should have been prepared, but yeah. I think it's certainly something that you can look at and say, here's a point where you think this shows very dramatically it's a good idea to have a plan in place.
Yeah.
which, I think is something that everybody knows. Obviously you want to feel like, if you could live for 3 months or 6 months or whatever, if you lost your job, that's, everyone's aware that it's a good idea, but I think it brings it into sharp relief at
Yeah.
times like this. It's at the front of people's minds, and then maybe it's a time that you can not take advantage necessarily, but when it's at the front of your mind, something that you'll be aware of, and you can think, okay, this is clearly something that I need to make sure in future I am more prepared for.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I think like for folks that that did or are going through this right now, like thinking about, man, I should plan for the future sucks. So getting through it now, like ask for help, like lean on your network. Like obviously you don't want to be a burden, but at the end of the day, like if someone's in a position and you really need something, like ask for it. Like people are willing to help. People understand that there's circumstances that this is just a crazy time. So ask for it. And one of the things that we were talking about earlier was, for example, like rent or something along those lines. Like I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay rent. I like lost whatever, like talk to your landlord. So I own a rental property, and I've gotten something from my property management saying, hey, like this is going to be a tough time for the majority of tenants that are that are on our clients' portfolios. Like as long as they're paying something, we recommend like, don't try to go through an eviction process. Don't do anything. Like it doesn't make sense. Like show some leniency. And if you're in a position like myself where I have a mortgage on a property, what I'm thinking is, okay, if my tenants didn't lose a job, all that stuff, everything's normal, right? Nothing changes. But if something did happen and my tenants aren't able to pay, my first call is to my bank, to my lender. And this happened in 2008. And it's not something that everyone intuitively knows, but negotiate with your lender, negotiate with your creditors, because at the end of the day, if you don't pay, their loan is worth zero, right? Like they make money when you pay the loan and you pay interest on it. But if you stop paying, now all of a sudden they have no income, and they're obviously, there's consequences, foreclosure, things like that. But if you have an open dialogue and are in that position, you can negotiate those things. So like I talked about how one of my uncles struggled with that in '08. They had issues and his house was underwater. He had to stop making payments for a while. And he went to his lender and said, hey, look, I can make payments. This is what I need. This is what I need. Ended up negotiating his interest rates down to 2%, which is insane at the time. And, like what people were getting back then.
Still pretty insane.
Exactly. Still very insane, right? Even right now with interest rates dropping, 2% is tough to get.
Yeah.
And so, and so he got a deal, and that's partly because he was proactive. So my point is, even if you're going through a hard time, like as hard as it may be, don't get your head down, pick your head up and just say, you know what, I'm going to plan for the future, but right now I've got to solve for right now, and just one problem at a time, take it one day at a time.
Something that we can take out of that is helpful is that it's very difficult to have those conversations. It's really hard to go to someone and say, I can't do this right now. Like, hey, I can't pay you my rent.
Yeah.
But it's an awful lot easier to go to someone and do that than to just let it go, just not pay it, and then wait for them to come to you. And I think that is something that's true of a lot of issues with money, that it's ultimately easier. The more conversations you're having about the issues that you have with the stakeholders in that position, in this case, we're talking about you maybe as a tenant, and then there's a landlord who you need to talk to. But like you said, you are acting as a landlord here, and you've got tenants, but you've also got a bank that you have obligations to.
Yeah.
The sooner you can give them the information that they need to make a decision, or to help, work with you to make a plan, the easier it is for everybody involved. Like it's much easier to have this difficult conversation now and get ahead of it than it is to, let it become more of an issue and hope that it just blows over. And that's the same with an awful lot of, things that we do or don't talk about when it comes to money, whether it's investments or debt payments or, whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
easier to have those conversations. And that's obviously something that we are attempting to foster with
Yeah.
Ostrich.
Absolutely.
Something that we're trying to make into more of a, not an expectation, but more of a norm within society is definitely something that can be helpful right now. Something that I think people can benefit from
Yeah.
today as they're going through these issues. Having those conversations makes it easier rather than harder.
Absolutely. No, great advice. I mean, I think we don't talk about help because someone might have been through this before. Someone's, like I said, like if you ask me that question, I can talk about that. If you ask, and you don't necessarily know the people in your network, in your family even necessarily, that have gone through these things because they probably haven't told you either. So you might have the answer right under your nose, and all the worry, the stress, the concern that comes along with this, like, with financial decisions specifically or financial troubles, talk about it. Talk about it. And it's just so important right now. And that's why Ostrich to like us is a huge solution. Even if you're, just being able to have a place to go to, people to talk to, people to get advice, to have gone there, that have done that before. And that's really, I think the key.
There's almost always somebody. It's very rare that you're in a situation as a human that no one has been in before. It's
Exactly.
such a rare occurrence. So, somebody out there probably has the experience of dealing with, whatever it is that you're trying to find an answer to, whether it's something positive or it's a difficult time. Somebody out there probably has advice for you, and hopefully you can find them on Ostrich when it's been built.
Exactly. And, right now you can obviously reach out to us on social media and we'll answer any questions or things like that you have on all the social platforms. It's just at THE Ostrich app, at the Ostrich app, THE Ostrich app. And we're happy to answer any of those.
If we know the answer.
If not, we'll crowdsource it.
If not, we'll try and find somebody who does.
Exactly. Right. And that's the point, because not everyone has all the answers, and that's okay. Just, can you find them? And that's
somebody has the answer. That's the most important thing.
Exactly. So we talked about challenges and people that are going through a hard time. I want to pivot because there are definitely folks that are now just working from home. Their jobs are still pretty solid. Maybe the business is going to go through some tough times, but they're still employed, and now they've got all this extra free time. Like, what are some of the positive things? I want to focus on that since we've kind of done our sad bit. What are some of the happy things that we can learn through this time?
I think, again, it's almost an opportunity to do some reflection more than anything else. I think is thinking about, that here you are doing your job in a different way to what you're used to. Like, you're still doing it, but you're at home. You're not interacting with your people at work.
Yeah.
Do you like the job, or do you just like the people at work? Is one thing that you can figure out. Do you enjoy working from home, or do you need the office environment? Like, I think it's time again to learn about what's effective for you, because you have this unique situation where, again, don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's this unique situation where you're having to go on with your normal daily life, but in just a completely different fashion. So you're learning a lot about what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what do you like, what do you not like. I think being aware of those differences and what you feel about them is really important, because it's all just a learning opportunity more than anything else. So, taking the time to, at the end of the day, when, hopefully your job isn't materially harder from home and you're able to be more productive, Or you can take the time that you would have taken to be going out and getting coffee with people, and maybe you take 5 or 10 minutes of that and think about what do I feel about this? What's this doing for me? What not doing for me? Being aware of those things and recording them, recording how you're feeling, recording how you're thinking, is a big opportunity to think about how you would do things differently, or how you prefer things to be what they were like before. This, who knows how long this is going to last. So maybe it's an opportunity to think about, okay, if I have to do this for 6 months working from home, what would I change? What would I not change? If this was my company, how would I do things differently? And making the most of those learning opportunities while you have them, I think is one big opportunity to take advantage of at this point in time.
It's like you said earlier, it's the reset button, right? You get a chance to reset and figure it out what works best for you. I think that's huge. I think this is also a chance to, like Andrew said, learn, right? You've now got free time. If you've always wanted to learn to play the guitar, you've always wanted to learn French, you've always wanted to become a big famous TikToker, do it, like you've got the time that you would commute. Now you can use it for, whatever it is that your passion is. Exactly. And exercising, as hard as it is to do that when you have work and not work and all that stuff, now at the end of the day, take care of your physical health, regardless of whether this is something where you've lost a job or you have a job or you're somewhere in between. Focus on your physical health, because at the end of the day, right, this virus is really affecting people that are not healthy and that have, there's obviously more to it than that, but at the end of the day, if you think about getting through this crisis, that is number one, is survive. Physically survive. And you can do that through exercise and all that stuff. So I think the other thing to note is you're probably going to learn that if your spending habits are going to change, right? You're at home, you're probably not going to spend as much if you were big on going out or things like that. You might actually see that this is a boon to your finances if you didn't suffer a job loss and you're still employed.
Right, you're making food at home every day. You're not going out. You've got to shop at the supermarket. If you're here, restaurants are shut. You can't get delivery. You can't.
No takeout, really? In the UK?
Not,
wow.
Everything is shut down. So we are I think it's 3 weeks from yesterday. There's all non-essential businesses, as Boris referred to them as, are shut. So no restaurants, no nothing. So you're not ordering in or ordering for pickup. You're certainly not going out. So that presumably is saving you money. And obviously, some of your time goes towards that as well. So that's a cost that you have to think about. But in a way, it offers you an opportunity to eat a bit more healthily. Hopefully you have some additional time without commuting to be able to make some meals. So again, going back to the physical health thing, it's an opportunity to eat a little bit more healthily, assuming that you can find the ingredients at the supermarket, which of course, that's difficult to control. I
found that most of the vegetables tend to be there. Those are some of the vegetables and fruits tend to be the ones that stay on the shelf a lot.
Darkest greens. We've actually, it's not been so bad here at the nearest Tesco's to us in Cirencester. In the middle of Cirencester has been pretty well stocked, surprising. And there's a big one just outside of the town that we haven't ventured to in honor of social distancing. But we've gotten a bit lucky there. Nice. But if you've got, as long as you can get the ingredients, then hopefully you're able to eat healthily, save a bit of money, as we said, and that's that's nice. That's puts you in a lucky position. What else?
I would say the other thing to note is that if you already have a financial game plan that you've been working and it hasn't really been affected by coronavirus, keep working it. If you were still investing a certain amount of money into the stock market every month, or dollar cost averaging, which, is a strategy for investing where you put the same amount of money into the stock market on a regular basis, no matter what the market's doing. And what that does is the price that you buy stocks at averages out over time. So dollar cost averaging. But anyway, it's a strategy, and it's shown to be one of the most effective ways because you're just regularly putting money into the market, and over time the market performs, the economies grow.
Yep.
So we hope, yes, right now it's, things are a little crazy, but, assuming that doesn't change, you'll be in a better position.
Good time to buy.
Yeah, exactly. I think the other thing to note is that if all of a sudden you're thinking of a crazy investment that you hadn't thought of before, like you just saw Bitcoin cratered and you're like, I've never thought about investing in Bitcoin. I don't know anything about it, but I'm going to buy it because it went way down. Like, that's probably not a good decision. Like, stick to your game plan and your financial just principles is all I'd say.
Yeah, suddenly making decisions based on, opportunities that you don't know anything about presenting themselves is a risky strategy in any time. And now, in particular, there certainly are opportunities out there that are different to any you've come across before, but it's just very important to be making sensible financial choices at this juncture.
Agreed.
So going out on a limb with something that you don't know a lot about, probably not a good idea. If you can get knowledgeable about something and you think it's a good deal, go for it. There's tons of value out there now compared with the last 10 years.
Oh, exactly.
It's a good time to buy stocks and shares, maybe, or maybe it's a terrible time and it'll be a good time in 3 weeks. Who knows?
Yeah. But stick to your game plan. That's what. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You should be going with what you had in place before. Think about, does it need adapting based on what's currently happening? But be making fully informed decisions. And if you had a financial game plan, as Will said previously, then don't necessarily decide to deviate from that hugely, especially if it was working for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
What else have we got? What other opportunities? If you're at home, all of a sudden you've got time. If you've got kids, think about all of the time you get to spend with your wonderful children.
Yeah.
And
pets, your furry children.
Pets, yeah. You could. Well, I was going to say you can educate your children. Tough to educate your pets, but yeah, like thinking about, if you're thinking about your finances in the context of this situation, it's very different to anything probably you've experienced, but also your kids have experienced. This is a great, maybe a great opportunity to talk to them about what's going on and start giving them the financial education that the United States or probably most countries around the world are not going to give them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good opportunity to chat to them. Who knows? Maybe they have a brilliant idea on what to do.
Yeah. You never know. And I mean, play games too, like with them or with friends. Like Monopoly, as silly as it is, like it teaches you some good stuff about finances. There's a game called Cash Flow 101. I think there's a 201 too. That's by Rich Dad. That's good. Even the game of life, you pick, your careers and all, as you go through the game, all these different things that impact what's going on. And if you think beyond just the entertainment value, there's actually principles that are behind that can actually be valuable. So especially with kids, or actually gave this advice to one of my my direct reports when I led a sales team. She was trying to improve her business acumen, and I said, just watch Shark Tank. Like, if you don't know where to start, watch Shark Tank. It's entertainment, but you're going to learn a lot about how to analyze deals. You're going to learn business acumen, and it may sound silly. You're not going to get the whole picture, obviously, but like, you're going to start to learn what a royalty is. You're going to start to learn, all these different things, like why debt matters, how to structure deals differently. Like, it's use this time to educate yourself when it comes to money. So
yeah, there's, hopefully there are opportunities out there for people. Hopefully there's more people with opportunities than difficulties. But
yeah, I think the last thing that I want to say, and I'll turn it over to you, Andrew, but if we go back to like the Great Depression or to any of these major financial crises, there's companies, there's people that have emerged, that have grown out of the tough times. So while things are a little bit crazy, if you have a good idea, a business, or you're working on something, like that could be the next huge company, because that happens, right? We've seen that happen time and time again, and the good, really solid businesses will survive. And I'm not to say that businesses that go out of business weren't solid, right? There's definitely circumstances, right? With restaurants, if all of a sudden no one can go out to eat, like it's tough to predict that. But there are going to be new companies, new ideas, new things that are created that will add tremendous value to our lives to come out of this situation. So.
Yeah, definitely. There's huge opportunity out there at the moment, and hopefully, we're able to take advantage of that with Ostrich, and with any luck, that's really relevant and helpful to a ton of people at the moment. It's that's what we've been aiming at, and I think this situation throws that issue into sharp relief for a lot of people. But I would definitely agree, there's opportunity out there, and things will eventually come back to some sort of more normal level, maybe. I would think anyway. And there will be completely new industries and businesses out there that are going to succeed based on a different worldview after this whole experience. So it's a terrible situation for us to be in as a society and as a species, but there will be opportunities there as well. So hopefully, some people are able to succeed. Hopefully we're all able to succeed. Hopefully as many people as possible end up surviving, and we end up with some new and exciting things out there afterwards.
Absolutely.
Led by the Ostrich app.
The Ostrich app. Love it. And if you want to connect, we're sending out updates. We've got a newsletter that's going out. We've got a referral program that we rolled out, so you can get some cool Ostrich swag if you refer folks to sign up for the app. So go to getostrich.com, and on there you'll see the place to sign up, enter your email, and you will start getting those updates as well as be enrolled in the referral program. So we really want you to join the flock. This is what Andrew and I are building here, is we want to create and change the world for the better. And we think that there's no better place than getting the finances, because that enables all these other parts of your lives and dreams that you have. So for us, this is it's a business, but it's a mission. And we want you to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Sooner rather than later.
With any luck.
So. Cool. Anything else?
I think so. Stay safe out there. Stay home. # flatten the curve.
Flatten the curve.
Social distancing.
Distancing.
Do what is right. Don't go and socialize. It's bad for the world.
Yeah. And if you're an introvert, then you've been doing a great job for a long time. So just keep it
practicing.
Up. Keep practicing. Yeah, keep it up. Keep it up.
Excellent. No, that's it. Be safe.
That concludes today's episode of the Silicon Alley podcast. I really appreciate you guys watching and hope that everyone stays safe during these crazy times. Remember that there is always opportunity hidden within every challenge, and no matter what you're going through, whether it's things are kind of moving as normal or you're really struggling, remember that you'll get through it. Times will continue to move on, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So hang in there, hang tight. We're here. Reach out to Andrew or I, reach out to Ostrich. We are here, and obviously rely on your support network if you need it. But regardless, thank you so much for listening and being a listener/watcher of the Silicon Alley podcast, also on YouTube, in case you guys didn't know that. And have a great one. And I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley podcast. Thanks so much for being a listener. Please share the podcast with others that you think would get value, and have a good one, guys.